All right, good afternoon, everyone. The hour is 1 o'clock, and I am very pleased to welcome you all to this month's edition of Planning Advisory Committee. The date is Tuesday, January 13th, 2026. We're going to preempt PAC with the public participation meeting. So we're gonna begin with that. I'm Councillor Emily Lutz and the chair of PAC, which is why I'm here. So we're going to start by calling to the public participation meeting to order. And we'll begin by taking roll call. So we'll note that all members of PAC are present with the exception of citizen member Eric Deal, who has sent regrets, so he will not be joining us today. And at this point, I'd take a motion to approve the agenda, moved by Councillor Peckford, seconded by Deputy Mayor McPherson. Any discussion, additions, deletions with the agenda for the public participation meeting? Oh, and Mayor Corkum, welcome. He's also joined us today. I didn't even see your blue sort of blended in with the wall. And we also have our Deputy CAO here, Andrea Heslop. She's our new Deputy CAO, so it's her first PAC. Welcome. And welcome to you guys as well. All right. I have a motion. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. I see no lights for errors or omissions, anything like that. So we'll call the question. All in favor or otherwise, please signify in the usual fashion. For those new to PAC, we do vote on these little things in front of us with a button. And then it takes 10 seconds and it appears on the screen. Or for those listening online, if you're wondering why the delay. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. At this point, does anyone have any disclosure of conflict of interest they wish to notify anyone of at this point before the PPM? Perfect. Am I on the right one? We don't have minutes. I'm reading the wrong one. That's why. We have no minutes. Okay. We're on item 6 now, which is business, and it's amendments to the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw to expand the New Minas Growth Center, facilitate development in the country residential A4 zone, and establish wellfield protections for the town of Wolfville water supply. And we do have manager of planning, Laura Mosier, here to give us our presentation. I will turn your light on, and we'll happily hear from you, Laura.
Thank you. Before I get started, I just want to say that green is not nearly as jarring on my screen, and so I would not have chosen that shade had I known. But anyways, we are here for a public participation meeting to discuss amendments to the map and text of our municipal planning documents, specifically the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw, with the intent to expand the growth center of New Minas, and there are other amendments associated with the country residential or A4 zone, as well as amendments to adopt the town of Wolfville wellfield protection overlays. That just wouldn't have fit on the slide. So in terms of origin, this project was initially authorized by council in May 2024 following the receipt of 2 requests for expanded development options in Greenwich on 2 specific sites, specifically the Old Horton High site and then a piece of vacant land on Sunnyside Drive. Staff retained an engagement specialist and developed an engagement plan with that specialist, which was undertaken over the course of 2025. We had 2 sessions in the spring and 1 in the fall. The town of Wolfville initially got in contact in March of 2025 regarding new well field protections associated with a new well that was drilled to serve the town of Wolfville and their municipal supply. The project was called Growing Greenwich and unfolded through 3 phases. The first phase was a community visioning meeting where we collected ideas, concerns, and hopes for the future of Greenwich. And this phase included a workshop and an online survey that happened over the course of May 2025. Our second phase dug a little bit deeper into those issues, and we asked some additional questions and also did some stakeholder interviews and held another community workshop and another online survey. Staff took the summer to develop the proposed amendments and presented them to the public in a final workshop, which occurred in September. And at each stage of this plan, we released reports indicating what we had heard, reporting back to the public on what we had heard from them in those initiatives. This is our process to date, and well, not to date, but this is starting from Planning Advisory Committee, and this is how the approval process is expected to unfold. So we did hold Planning Advisory Committee in December and received authorization from this committee to hold this public participation meeting, which is highlighted in orange on your screen. Following this meeting, we expect Planning Advisory Committee to provide council with a recommendation related to approval of these amendments. At that point, the amendments would follow our typical approval process with a first reading, a public hearing, a second reading. And should council adopt the amendments, they would be forwarded on to the province for review and ultimately potentially amendment and approval. It is possible they refuse. Up until recently, I hadn't seen the province refuse planning documents, but that now has happened, so it is a distinct possibility. So in terms of a summary of what we did hear, rather, the things that residents like about Greenwich is its rural lifestyle while being close to amenities. There was significant support for farming activities, farm markets, and agritourism. There was also support for increased residential development with a range of views on how much or how little that should happen. There was some support for affordable housing with good transit. There was some support for compact development, such as apartment complexes, but there were a significant number of comments that did not want to see that happening in Greenwich. There was support for mixed housing types and avoiding urban sprawl as well, so a wide variety of views. In terms of the broader community, there was a belief that there was some room for improvement, such as a community playground or other park or fitness amenities. There was a lack of crosswalks, heavy traffic, and there was comments regarding trust in the process in terms of why the planning documents were being reviewed so in such a significant way this soon after their initial adoption in 2019. So our proposed amendments that came out of our engagement are to expand the growth center of New Minas and to provide some modest increases in residential development permissions in the country residential or A4 zone, and then the introduction of wellfield protection regulations associated with the town of Wolfville municipal water supply. And I'll review the proposed amendments now. With regards to the expansion of the New Minas Growth Center, it's important to point out from a policy perspective that the community of Greenwich contains almost all of the characteristics of a growth center as defined in Policy 2.1.3 of our municipal planning strategy, including water and sewer servicing, active transportation corridors in the form of the Harvest Moon Trail and a sidewalk, community facilities such as the Greenwich Community Hall. There are diverse housing options up to and including apartment buildings in Greenwich and a large-scale residential care facility. And there is a concentration of commercial and industrial activities. There's only one characteristic missing, which is the educational facilities. These are all outlined again in 2.1.3 of the MPS. So while there is not an educational facility, or otherwise known as typically a school, located in Greenwich, there is one across the highway, across the 101 on the south side, being Horton High, with elementary and middle schools located in the east end of New Minas as well. In terms of rural characteristics, we see farming, large lot residential uses, and agricultural related commercial uses. So Greenwich is a bit of a unique community in the county because it has both all of the rural characteristics we would expect to see in our rural communities, but also all of the urban characteristics that we see in some of our growth centers. This is the current zoning of Greenwich. So you can see on the west end, we see mostly country residential with some pockets of A1. This is where the most of the residential development has occurred in Greenwich over the years. And the east end has significant portions of A1 with A4 generally along the corridor, and then some A3 denoting and C4 denoting commercial uses in the area. This is a proposed, it's a snip of the New Minas zoning map, and the only thing that's been changed is circled in red on your screen. This amendment seeks to pull in the entirety of what's known as the old Horton High site, and the proposed amendment would also see this parcel be placed in the C3 or mixed commercial residential zone as opposed to the comprehensive residential neighborhood zone or the R5 zone. From the beginning, the project has been about providing an opportunity to understand better the desires and concerns of residents, and the process has been aimed at reflecting on the current needs and values, focusing on Greenwich more specifically, and supporting smart decisions, balancing growth and preservation, and ensuring community voices are heard. And so community voices indicated that there was no opposition to expanded development on this site, but that a more cautious approach should occur in the balance of the area. So the expansion of the Minas Growth Center, again, from a policy perspective, represents a fairly minor expansion of the growth center. It's been really just been adjusted to match the current property lines. The property included is one of the properties that was the subject of a request. In order for the landowners to begin pursuing their development goals, the property has been placed in the mixed commercial residential or C3 zone. Any additional development that would occur over and above the as of right uses would occur by development agreement and would come back to this committee. With regards to the proposed amendments to the country residential zone, we did hear from folks that they were looking to have some expanded developability, such as being able to build an accessory dwelling or a secondary dwelling. They're slightly different but similar. And so that's something that we have included in the amendments. And on the basis of the second request, there were some limitations to the development agreement policy related to clustered dwellings in the A4 zone, especially when it comes to sewer serviced A4 properties. The policy as written today limits the development on the lot to 8 units, regardless of the size of the lot. So staff are proposing to remove the upper limit on the number of residential units and prefer to link it entirely to the lot area. And we've also reduced the lot area requirement. The previous policy indicated that the lot area associated with the development of a 1-unit dwelling was intended to be used in a sewer serviced A4 zone that's 10,000 square feet, which does not result in an overly efficient use of existing water and sewer infrastructure. And so staff are proposing to reduce that by 50% to, within a sewer serviced A4 zone, it would be 5,000 square feet. Within rurally non-sewer serviced A4, these would, it would be a reduction, but it would be closer to the, I believe the initial is 30,000 and therefore would be reduced to 15,000. But that would also be subject to requirements related to septic systems. So the policy is really generally intended to be used in sewer serviced areas, and that's what we've seen thus far. With regard to the zone purpose of the country residential, lands located in this zone are intended to maintain on-site serviced low-density neighborhoods consisting primarily of 1 or 2 unit dwellings while encouraging the efficient use of land and infrastructure in an agricultural setting. This zone has also been applied to isolated areas of service development in rural areas of the municipality. So again, we will be focusing primarily on the sewer serviced portions of A4 in this regard. And part of the reason for that comes out of our policies related to municipal infrastructure, specifically water and sewer infrastructure. Our municipal vision, goals, and objectives emphasize over and over again in our policy documents the goal of efficient and cost-effective delivery of municipal infrastructure. Large-scale development in rural areas not serviced by municipal infrastructure is discouraged. This is intended to assist in preserving agricultural land and maintaining a rural character. The trade-off for that is to ensure that the infrastructure we do have is used in the most efficient ways possible. And that's the driving force behind these amendments. We see policy support for additional developability within the country residential zone, specifically in policy 2.1.3a, which enables new public road development in the A4 zone. This is unique to this zone. No other rural zone permits the development of new public roads. This is to be able to unlock additional development because it's only through this that you can create more lots. So the summary of amendments, we're looking to permit secondary dwellings in the country residential zone, which would enable up to 2 residential units in either 1 or 2 dwellings, or 1 dwelling and an accessory dwelling without the need for a development agreement. Currently, that type of development would need to go through development agreement. As I was discussing earlier, we are looking to amend the development agreement policy related to increased residential development to reduce the per unit lot requirement in serviced areas from 10,000 square feet to 5,000, to remove the limit of 8 residential units. But we did hear from the public that the policy was unclear because it used the term small scale buildings. So we've clarified that within the amendment to link the maximum height to the as of right height permission in the zone, which is 35 feet. With regard to the Wolfville wellfield protection overlays prohibit uses that may be risky to municipal water supplies, such as gas stations, automotive repair, chemical or fertilizer storage, dry cleaning facilities, and scrap and salvage operations. Policy 2.6.2 indicates that council will cooperate with neighboring towns to adopt mapping and regulations to protect municipal water supplies. The town of Wolfville recently drilled a new well to increase its water supply, and as a result they have new mapping and regulations associated with that. And we have always been cooperative with our town partners, and so these amendments are coming forward now as part of this overall project. That completes my presentation. I'll pass it back to the chair for comments from the public.
Thank you very much. And just a reminder to everybody, we are in the public participation meeting, so we will get to PAC shortly, where we can engage in motions and debate and all that other fun stuff. But we are in a public participation meeting at this point. So at this point, I would look, is there any comments from the public? Oh, Councillor Gates, you have a question or comment? Go ahead. You're a member of the public, really,
Thank you, Madam
technically.
Chair. I just have a couple of quick questions, if you don't mind. Through you, Laura, is the boundary amendment that we're looking at moving, that is a water and sewer serviced area for the municipality?
The community of, through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Gates, the community of Greenwich has water servicing up to, from the boundary of New Minas to Eden Row, and all of Highway 1 has sewer service. So all of Greenwich currently has sewer service. This is not an expansion of that infrastructure.
Perfect. And I'm just wondering, for clarity, if you might bring up the map again of that boundary, please, and thank you. And a question that I might have is the property that's been developed to the east of that, would it not encompass that as well, or is it because it is developed?
So through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Gates, we didn't hear a whole lot from the public about Fairbanks. That is Fairbanks Avenue. It is entirely developed at this point under DA, so staff did not get a whole lot of feedback to bring that into the growth center of New Minas, since it is entirely developed.
Okay, thank you. And the last one is, I understand new growth brings new revenues for the municipality, which is greatly needed. And I would be voting to support that when it comes time. But one of the questions that I might have is the added pressure that new growth may put on our sewer facilities. Is there any issues or concerns that you might have for that at the moment?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Gates, I believe Council has received several presentations around the capacity and the status of regional sewage treatment plants over the last year. My understanding is that there is adequate capacity and that the municipality has undertaken many initiatives to try and solve any issues with the functioning of that sewage plant. all development will ultimately outgrow its infrastructure eventually, but the idea behind good planning and good infrastructure planning, especially in partnership with our engineering departments, is that we can keep tabs on where we're at and ensure that the funds are available for upgrade when necessary.
Thank you. And just to clarify, just for everyone, the regional sewer is the sewer in New Minas. So I think that sometimes when we talk about that for the public, it's not overly clear what we're talking about. But the regional sewer in this area would be captured by the regional sewer, which is the one in New Minas. That's infamous now at this point. Citizen Member Morse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Ms. Mosier. Just wondered if you could give us some comments about, you mentioned the two properties that prompted this process, being the other one on Sunnyside, and sort of when it was decided that that would not be included in the expansion, and or why?
So, through you, Mr. Morse, through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Morse. I knew that didn't sound quite right. The second property is right here where my pointer is. And it was felt that, so this property is in the A4 zone. It was felt that this property has some very significant development constraints. The first and foremost is there is a giant ravine running through the middle of the property, as well as watercourses in and around it with very limited sort of frontage, but well, it actually has 3 frontages. So in some ways that's flexible, and other ways the frontages are a little bit unusual, and could create some difficulties for development, especially in consideration of the other constraints on the property. And it was felt that the development of that property would be best served through a development agreement in order to take into account those constraints. And the revised development agreement policy will assist this landowner in, if not achieving what he had initially planned, getting much closer than the existing policy would have gotten him.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morse. And members from the public, this is your meeting, so it's in the name. So you're welcome to come to the microphone if you have any comments on this particular meeting at this point. And after that, the next time to give comments is at the end of PAC. So this is not the final moment, but it's the final one before we make a decision at PAC. So I see no one running to the microphone. So at this point, I look for a motion to adjourn. I think we're okay to take a motion. Moved by Councillor Peckford, seconded by Citizen Member Friars. Thank you. All in favor, please signify in the usual fashion. Thank you. Thanks to all of you for being here as well. I'm assuming you're staying. The meeting is almost adjourned. Here we are. Perfect. All right, now I'm going to throw this agenda away so I stop getting confused because they look identical except for one thing. All right, so now we're at the commencement of Planning Advisory Committee. It's Tuesday, January 13th, 2026. We're in Colebrook. And I would call the meeting to order and look to take roll call. So if you could indicate on your pin pads that you're present, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. And for those listening online, we are all here with the exception of Citizen Member Deal, who sent his regrets due to a medical reason. And we have Mayor Corkum joining us as well. So welcome, Mayor Corkum, members of the public and staff. Oh, thank you. And at this point, now that we have an approved agenda, I'll read the land acknowledgement. I would note that the municipality of the County of Kings is in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral, unceded, and current territory of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality of the County of Kings is a neighbor to Annapolis Valley First Nation and Glooscap First Nation, as well as a diverse urban and rural Indigenous population. We are all treaty people and commit to upholding the peace and friendship treaties and working towards reconciliation in all areas of the municipality. So with that being said, the next item is disclosure of conflict of interest issues. So I would ask that any member of PAC disclose if they have a conflict at this time. Seeing none, we'll move to the approval of minutes, item 6. Our last meeting was prior to Christmas and the holidays, December 9th, 2025. Those minutes were distributed. Are there any errors or omissions that anyone noted in those minutes? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion to approve, moved by Councillor Gates, seconded by Deputy Mayor McPherson. Any discussion on the approval of the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor or otherwise, please vote now. And while we wait for the results of the vote, I'd ask that you think if there's any business arising you'd like to raise. The motion carries, the minutes are approved. Any business arising? Okay. Seeing no lights, we'll move on. Our next item of business, we have two, I guess. Item 8 is the previously discussed item at the public participation meeting. Laura, do you intend to give the presentation a second time? No. Okay.
I did give it last month, so.
Yes. Yes. The presentation has been given more than once. So do we have a proposed motion that is it on the screen? Or I can get it out of my document. All right. So we've seen the presentation. At this point, we've had the public participation meeting. This, of course, is a usual motion that would come before PAC, which is a recommendation to municipal council. Same process as usual. So I'll read it for the record. The motion reads that Planning Advisory Committee recommend that municipal council give first reading and hold a public hearing regarding amendments to the municipal planning documents to expand the New Minas Growth Center, facilitate development in the country residential A4 zone, and establish wellfield protections for the town of Wolfville water supply. Do I have a mover of that motion? Moved by Deputy Mayor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Gates. Thank you very much. And is there discussion or debate on the motion at this time? Or further questions for the presenter? I should have also said that. I see no lights. Are we sure? We're good? Oh, Councillor McPherson, or Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, excuse me, a little bit confused. Sorry. Are we looking for questions of clarity? Or are we into the debate part of this process?
We're in the debate. I assume all questions were asked during the public participation meeting, but I would allow any clarifying questions at this point, should any arise, because we want to make sure this is the last time. So we want to make sure we really get it all out before we send it to council. So if you have a question of clarification, I would happily allow that.
No, I have a commentary that I'd like to make. And the reason I want to make this commentary is because this has been an ongoing debate for quite some time, and evidently it's quite important to the citizens of the Greenwich area, and we saw that through the consultation process that was held over a long period of time. And we also understand that there had been a previous consultation back in 2019. So given that reality, I think it's important to have some type of commentary. So I ask you to bear with me while I just say a few words regarding this. Some of the factors at play here evidently are this geographic location is between Wolfville and New Minas, which are highly developed areas, both residentially and business-wise. So it's kind of an interesting area in the fact that it's sandwiched between two highly developed areas already. We know, as presented, that it's a serviced area, so the infrastructure is already in place. So you know, resources have been put in place to ensure that there's water and sewer already running through there, which I think in itself adds some important implications to decision making here. There's a need for housing. We know that within Nova Scotia and within our area in particular, we are growing, and there's a need for housing, in particular affordable housing. So those are factors that are at play. A few others at play is the fact that this is a traditional farming area, and we know that, with a specific identity that the citizens are interested in maintaining, and we get that. So already you can see kind of opposing forces pushing on both ends of this decision. The identity and lifestyle of the Greenwich area are important, in particular to the traditional families who have been living there for a long time. I do want to commend staff on taking on a rigorous engagement process. This was not taken lightly. There were 3 phases to the engagement process and lots of opportunity for community to have input into the decision making. I believe that what we've come up with here, or staff has come up with, is a strong compromise. It's an attempt to utilize the infrastructure that's so important and in place and increase the potential for housing, at the same time clearly understanding and honoring the identity which is so important to the citizens. So, you know, this is an attempt at a compromise for that. Given that information, I think this is the best decision possible. I think it tries really to provide some type of reasoning and support to both ends of this debate, and therefore I will be supporting the recommendation as it is on the screen, because I think it's probably the best scenario that we could come up with at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for those comments. Citizen Member Morse, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of comments I wanted to make too. One, when I think back about our original presentation on the Growing Greenwich project and the options that were shown, of course, what's happening today is nowhere near what was presented in the beginning, and there were some options there that certainly there could have been potential for farmland to be, or land that was currently being farmed to be lost, etc. But I think as we've been shown here today, we're only talking about one property being expanded into the growth center, and the additional development changes I think have very low impact, and I don't think they'll have any impact on the current property being farmed in Greenwich. So I think it's just important to remember that we are only talking about one property being expanded into the growth center.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morris. Oh, what did I do? Okay. Anything further from any members of the Planning Advisory Committee at this time? Okay. Seeing none, just if PAC would permit from the chair, I have just a couple comments. Just that I will be in support of this motion. And I wanted to thank everyone who was involved throughout the entire process. And this is not, of course, the end. This just goes to council. And then there's a public hearing, and then it goes back to council. So a couple more opportunities for it to come before some decision makers at this time. But I just wanted to thank everyone who was part of the process, who gave their opinion and who shared their vision for this community, and everyone who took the time to be involved in the process. I think it's important to thank everybody who came forward, and anytime anyone expresses an opinion about how they feel the future of their community should go, I think it's a big win. So just thanks to all those involved. And at this point, we have no further lights. The motion's been moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor or otherwise, please vote now. And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And our second item of business today is the year-end planning activity report, which is one of my favorite days of the year, where we get to hear from planning staff all the different things that have been going on in the county in regards to planning. And I know it's been a busy one, so I'll give the floor back to you, Ms. Mosier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is our year-end progress report. Policy PLAN-09-003 requires that staff present information related to planning applications received and completed, appeals to the Nova Scotia Regulatory and Appeals Board, a summary of development activity, and an update on ongoing projects. We do this twice a year. The policy says we're supposed to do it in December, but that really robs us of being able to do a year-end progress report. So we've moved it to January. And we'll run through the numbers. With regards to the applications we have received over the course of this year, we have received a total of 25 applications. I think if you add that up, it adds up to 26, and that is because we did receive a telecommunications applications late in the year, which I forgot to count, to be quite honest. We did receive 12 rezoning applications, 8 development agreement applications, 4 land use bylaw text amendments. Some might think that's a cause for concern. However, our documents are still quite young in the grand scheme of a planning horizon. And so it stands to reason that as we use them, we may come across issues that or regulations that maybe aren't working the way they intended or could work better. And so when those are discovered and it's intended, a member of the public identifies a shortcoming, they might apply to amend the text to rectify that. So I don't see the 4 text amendments as necessarily a bad thing, but more that it's helping us improve our documents on a smaller scale. We did have 1 application for a development agreement amendment, and we did discharge 2 development agreements. And the reasons for those discharges were that the current zoning is more permissive than the development agreement was. So it only stood to reason that the owners of those properties would want to be able to take advantage of those new permissions. For those that are more graphically minded, here's a pie graph of our applications. We can see that 44% of our applications were rezonings. These numbers are generally pretty consistent with what we saw in June, so that trend has continued. In terms of the types of uses that are looking to be enabled through our applications, residential continue to top the list of the rationales for increased residential development being the reason for the applications. 7 were commercial in nature. 4 were related to tourism. We continue to see that tourism is a huge part of our economy. That's why it's given its own line item as opposed to being lumped together with the other commercial uses. We had 1 institutional application, being the daycare in Auburn, 2 industrial applications, and 1 for commercial recreation. So again, for those graphically minded, 36% were residential, 20% were tourism, 24 were other commercial uses, 4 agricultural, and 12 industrial, and 4 commercial recreation rather. In terms of our completed applications, we completed 21 applications this year, which is pretty good. I would say that that's definitely on track, and I think that that speaks to us being fully staffed again for the first time in a while. So welcome, Melissa, and thanks for upping our stats this year. This is all in your report, so if you wanted to delve a bit further into these, you're more than welcome to. We also had a reduction in the number of appeals we had at the Regulatory and Appeals Board, which staff are definitely happy about. They take up a lot of our time, and I would suspect that our increase in the number of applications processed is also an indication, or is also linked to this reduction in appeals. Only 1 of the 3 appeals proceeded to a hearing, which was ultimately dismissed in favor of council's decision. That would have been our appeal for the rezoning application on Brooklyn Street for Nick Bentley by the hospital for an R2 to R4 rezoning. So that was dismissed, upholding council's decision. 1 appeal was withdrawn. That would have been the Greenfield Road, development agreement for 8 tourist cabins. The applicant did appeal that decision, but ultimately withdrew their appeal. And 1 appeal was dismissed in advance of the hearing due to the individual not being determined to be aggrieved. In terms of our permits this year, the development officers processed 809 permits this year, of which most were residential, again, nearly 80%, and 21% were non-residential. That is the exact same breakdown as we had in June. So we were definitely on trend with that as well. We also have Housing Accelerator Fund numbers to report. So we are required to construct a total of 796 residential units over the course of our Housing Accelerator funding period, and 361 missing middle. In year 1, we did 271 total units and 174 missing middle. Year 2, we had a huge increase up to 370 units with 282 missing middle. So our total completed over the course of this period is 641, which represents 81% of our total commitment. And our missing middle, we have blown it out of the water at 126%. So just as a reminder, missing middle unit is considered a unit in a dwelling containing more than 2 units and up to 4 stories in height. So if you're not a single family dwelling or a 1-unit dwelling, chances are in the County of Kings you're a missing middle unit. We have several planning projects underway. As you know, we are just wrapping up our Growing Greenwich project. We also, you also, council, approved bylaw 114 now? 114 now, sorry, this is an old slide. The subdivision bylaw and specifications, it has been adopted by council and we are currently awaiting approval from the province. Council has also authorized us to do a housing review to review our residential zones and where they've been applied to facilitate greater residential density in growth centers as of right. So staff, given that we are just about done our Growing Greenwich project, is going to ramp up this project this year. So you can expect to see some activity related to that. We are also working on permitting rural secondary units, aside from the A4 zone, which has been covered off through the Growing Greenwich project. This has also been authorized by council. We held a public information meeting in September. Was that in September? October, sorry, thank you. October, it was very well attended. There were roughly 20 members of the public with a lot of support and very little opposition. So we do expect to bring that report forward to PAC in the coming months. Council has also requested a report outlining impacts related to changing the A1 infill distance. As you're all likely aware, it is currently set at 300 feet and council has asked staff to report back on the impacts related to increasing that distance to 500 feet. And we have also received 2 requests from 2 individuals, well, one being the village, it's not an individual, it's the village, to expand the boundary of the growth center of Port William. So staff are currently working on a report to bring to council or committee of the whole related to that in also the coming months. I would also note that it has been 1 year since this current council has been assigned. Are you assigned to committees? Appointed to committees? That sounds better. You've now been in place for 1 year. You've received some training, and you've also had a chance to apply that training over the course of the year. But we all know that sometimes people have follow-up questions, and planning is not necessarily the simplest of matters, and so there may be questions that you might have, and so we thought we would give you the opportunity, not necessarily today, we'll give you some time to think of your questions, to do, if you wish, to do an Ask Me Anything. So planning staff will make themselves available, and potentially, if you wish, at the next PAC meeting or at a future meeting, if the committee so wishes, we would have a planning item called Ask Me Anything, and we could do that if there was interest. Other than that, that completes my report. Maybe we can have a discussion around if the committee is interested in that session. Otherwise, there is a recommendation to receive the report for information.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mosier. That's wonderful and good to see an encapsulation of all the different, from up and down and side to side, the various conversations that PAC and planning and council have had all across the board. So wonderful to see it all laid out like that. Any Ask Me Anythings at this point for Laura? We can go there now. Any burning questions? Mayor Corkum, you got any questions for Laura? You sure? Okay, great. I see I have no lights, and then just the motion in front of us, which reads that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends that Municipal Council receive the results of the year. So we won't be doing, just sorry, I'm interrupting myself. Will we be giving this presentation to council as well?
We had not intended to, but I mean, the presentation's made. If that was something council wanted, I could.
Okay. Just curious why we're recommending to Municipal Council, or should PAC simply be receiving? If that's a typo, or we're good to, does it matter? Trish?
To you, I think our thought process is really the same as yours, that council as a whole would benefit from seeing the summary, but we hadn't taken it to the next step of a presentation to council.
Okay. So we'll leave the motion as is then and proceed with the motion, which reads from the beginning. That Planning Advisory Committee recommends that Municipal Council receive the results of the year-end planning services review as set out in the report to Planning Advisory Committee dated January 13th, 2026. Is our mover, Councillor Gates, seconder, Citizen Member Farr, thank you. And any discussion on the motion? So it will be going to council, just to clarify. All right. Okay, Deputy Mayor's preparing to vote, not to put his light on. I saw your shoulder move. That was enough. Okay, I have no lights, apparently. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor or otherwise, please vote in the usual fashion. You're permitted to vote now, Deputy Mayor. Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, PAC. Is there any other business to come before Planning Advisory Committee this afternoon? I have no lights. Are there any comments from the public who have joined us this afternoon? Mr. Cosman, just come on up to the podium. Please state your name and civic for the record. And the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. I do want to, Tom Cosman, I'm a farmer in Greenwich, 9925 Highway 1, the bee farm. You've all driven past it. I would like to thank you all for the decision you made to recommend the passage of this to council. I agree with the Deputy Mayor that this is a reasonable compromise that takes both sides, takes the residential side and the agricultural side into account. I think that one thing you've missed in your characterization of Greenwich was the significance of the 4 farms, I believe it is, way beyond their productive capacity. They're retail center for dozens, hundreds of farms probably in the Annapolis Valley, and the center of agricultural tourism in the valley. So their economic impact on the whole county is far beyond the 4 farms. I also want to thank Citizen Morris, Member Morris, for his pointing out the difference between what came forward at the beginning of the Growing Greenwich process and what has emerged from it. What came forward was far different than what council had asked to be studied, and the end recommendation has gone back to what a previous council recommended be studied. So I'm glad that we returned from this, for a farmer in Greenwich, painful walk anyway. I'm glad we're back to what was recommended by council in 2024, 25, I'm losing track now. But anyway, I'm glad you came to your decision. I thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cosman. Any other comments? We cannot be convinced. Okay. Then we'll move to item 11, date of the next meeting, February 10th, 2026, likely here in these chambers at 1 p.m., same as usual. And so with that being said, I'd take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Gates, seconded by Citizen Member Morse. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor or otherwise, please vote in the usual fashion. And as always, big thanks to everyone for being here with us today for this very exciting meeting. And thanks to staff for all the work you put in, and to PAC for your thoughtful comments. Appreciate you all. Citizen Member Morris, do you wish to adjourn? You didn't vote. You can mark them as a yes. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.